You have to understand something at a very deep level. And if you miss this, everything else we talk about today will collapse under its own weight. Many empaths grow up believing that their ability to feel deeply is a responsibility to suffer deeply. Somewhere along the way, empathy got confused with self-sacrifice. And that confusion doesn't just drain you, it reshapes your identity in ways that are incredibly hard to undo. Because when you're highly attuned to others, you don't just notice pain, you absorb it, you read between words, you feel what's unspoken, you sense shifts in energy before anyone else even registers them. And that awareness is powerful, but without clarity becomes a trap. You start thinking, if I can feel it, I should fix it. If I can understand it, I should tolerate it. If I can hold space for it, I should endure it. And that's where the breakdown begins. Empathy, in its purest form, is the ability to understand and connect without losing yourself. But self-sacrifice is the gradual erosion of your own needs, your own boundaries, your own truth, in the name of keeping someone else emotionally stable. And the dangerous part is, it doesn't feel wrong at first. It feels noble. It feels like love. It feels like purpose. But let's be honest about the long-term effect. When you consistently override your own emotional signals to prioritize someone else's, you train your nervous system to believe that your needs are secondary. You start abandoning yourself in subtle ways, staying silent when something hurts, saying yes when your body is screaming no, rationalizing behavior that deep down you know is not okay. And over time, this creates a quiet resentment, not just toward others, but toward yourself, because a part of you knows you're betraying your own truth. And here's the philosophical shift you have to make. Understanding someone does not mean you are obligated to carry them. Compassion does not require self-neglect. In fact, real empathy becomes distorted the moment it costs you your sense of self. Think about it. If your presence in someone's life requires you to shrink, to suppress, to constantly regulate their emotions at the expense of your own, that's not connection. That's a form of emotional dependency disguised as closeness. Strong empathy is not about how much you can endure. It's about how clearly you can remain yourself while still being open to others. And that requires discipline. It requires awareness. It requires the courage to say, I see your pain, I understand it, but I will not abandon myself to carry it. Because the truth is, when you stop sacrificing yourself, something interesting happens. The relationships that were built on your overgiving start to fall away. And that can feel like loss, but what's really happening is alignment. You're no longer participating in dynamics that require your depletion to survive. And yes, that's uncomfortable, but it's also necessary, because if you don't make this distinction, if you keep confusing empathy with self-sacrifice, you will wake up one day emotionally exhausted, deeply unfulfilled, and disconnected from your own identity, wondering how you gave so much and received so little in return. So this is the line you have to draw, and it's non-negotiable. I will care, but I will not collapse. I will understand, but I will not disappear. I will love, but I will not lose myself, because the moment empathy costs you your identity, it's no longer empathy, it's self-erasure. You have to understand this truth. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's not a weakness. It's not something to apologize for, and it's certainly not something to try to hide. The world has conditioned us to believe that feeling too much is dangerous, inconvenient, or unworthy, but that's a lie. Your ability to perceive emotions, to notice subtleties, to intuit what others cannot is a gift. It's a form of heightened awareness that gives you access to a depth of life most people will never touch. But here's the problem most empaths face. They mistake their sensitivity for vulnerability. And sensitivity without boundaries is like a lightning rod, absorbing every shock around you until you burn out. The truth is, it's not the depth of your feelings that overwhelms you, it's the lack of structure to hold them. Without boundaries, every emotion becomes everyone else's problem. Every upset, every anxiety, every subtle shift in mood lands on you as though you are the only person capable of carrying it. And that is where the danger lies. Sensitivity without boundaries doesn't just drain you. It blurs the line between you and the world around you. You start to forget where you end and where others begin. You start to believe that you are responsible for people's happiness, that if they are sad, it's your failure, and if they are angry, it's your fault. The energy you think is love is actually chaos masquerading as care. And when you can't protect yourself from that chaos, it begins to erode your sense of identity, your peace, your joy. Here's the paradox that most empaths never realize. Your sensitivity is your power, but only if it is contained. Boundaries are not walls. They are scaffolding. They are the structure that allows your gift to exist without destroying you. They teach you where to say yes, and just as importantly, where to say no. They allow you to feel deeply, to connect authentically, without losing your balance or your center. When you learn this, you stop overextending yourself in relationships, in work, in life. You begin to realize that your energy is finite, and it must be protected, nurtured, and managed with the same care you give to others. Boundaries are not rejection. They are not selfishness. They are clarity. They are the recognition that your capacity to love, to understand, to empathize is a resource, not an unlimited commodity. And when you respect that resource, something magical happens. People start respecting it too. When you know where you begin and where you end, the people around you can see it. And your connections become stronger, not weaker, because they are now built on mutual respect rather than unbalanced sacrifice. Think about it. How many empaths do you know who feel exhausted, resentful, or trapped, not because they care too little, but because they care too much? Not because they love poorly, but because they never learned where their responsibility ends and someone else's begins? This is the invisible trap. This is the silent weight that drags empaths down, quietly eroding their confidence, their health, and their spirit. The lesson is simple but profound. Sensitivity is a gift only when it is paired with boundaries. You are not weak because you feel deeply. You are powerful because you feel wisely, when you have the courage to protect your energy, when you have the discipline to honor your limits, and when you have the clarity to distinguish between what is yours to carry and what is not. So here's what I want you to remember. Your sensitivity is your superpower, but it only works when it's contained. Without boundaries, it destroys you. With boundaries, it elevates you. You can feel deeply, connect fully, and still stand unshakable in your own truth. Protect your energy, respect your limits, and let your sensitivity become the power you were born to wield. One of the hardest lessons for empaths to learn is this: not everyone deserves access to your energy. And when I say energy, I don't mean some mystical, abstract concept. I mean your time, your attention, your emotional bandwidth, your very presence, because empaths have a natural tendency to give, to open up, to absorb, and they do it without checking whether the other person is worthy of that level of investment. And the truth is, not everyone is. You see, empaths are wired to connect. You feel what others feel. You sense their needs and you naturally want to help. You want to heal, to soothe, to make life easier for people around you. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's your gift. But here's the problem. When you give indiscriminately, when you assume that understanding someone equals obligation, you attract the wrong people into your life. You attract emotional vampires, people who are incapable of self-regulation, individuals who are manipulative or draining, not because you did anything wrong, but because your openness created space for them to take. And make no mistake, this isn't about being cold or detached. This isn't about building walls to shut out the world. This is about discernment. It's about understanding that your energy is finite. It's about recognizing that every minute, every ounce of attention you give is an investment. And just like money or time, you have to decide where it goes, because once it's spent, you can't get it back. Here's where empaths often make the biggest mistake. They believe that empathy equals responsibility. They believe that because they can feel someone else's pain, they must solve it. Because they can understand someone's struggles, they must endure them. And while empathy is a bridge to connection, it is not a contract of self-erasure. Feeling deeply does not obligate you to stay in toxic dynamics. Understanding someone does not require you to sacrifice your own emotional health. This is where boundaries, once again, come in. The most powerful empaths are not the ones who give endlessly. They are the ones who give wisely. They understand that access to them is a privilege, not a right, and they make decisions accordingly. They don't let manipulation or neediness dictate the terms of their involvement. They don't tolerate behaviors that diminish them. And they certainly don't confuse their willingness to empathize with permission to be drained. It's hard to hear this because empaths are naturally generous. They want to help, to heal, to be needed. But the reality is, when you give your energy to everyone who asks, you dilute it. You deplete your capacity to help those who truly matter. You distract yourself from people, opportunities, and relationships that deserve the depth of your presence. And there's another subtle danger. When empaths allow everyone access to their energy, they start to lose themselves in the that process. They absorb so much that they forget who they are, what they value, and what they need to thrive. Their own emotions get buried under the weight of everyone else's, and their clarity, their power, and even their joy begin to erode. So here's the lesson. Not everyone deserves your energy. You are allowed to choose who you spend your time with. You are allowed to protect your attention, your emotions, your presence. You are allowed to recognize that giving too much to the wrong people is a form of self-sabotage, not love. Empathy is your strength, but only when it is exercised with wisdom. Remember this. Understanding someone is powerful, but it does not create an obligation to sacrifice yourself. Your energy is sacred. Guard it. Choose wisely who receives it. Because the moment you stop giving it indiscriminately, your life becomes fuller, your relationships stronger, and your impact deeper. Many empaths fall into a subtle but dangerous trap, the belief that healing others will heal them. It's almost invisible at first, this pattern. You start by helping someone because you care, and that's natural. You want to soothe their pain, lighten their burden, and make life a little easier for them. But over time, it becomes something more insidious. You begin to unconsciously use their struggles as a way to fill the emptiness inside yourself. You think, if I can fix them, if I can save them, if I can save them, if I can make them whole, maybe I will finally feel whole too. And that's where the cycle begins. You become indispensable to people who are broken while your own wounds remain unaddressed. You expend your energy, your emotional bandwidth, and sometimes your very identity to stabilize others. And while that may feel noble or even loving, it's really a form of avoidance. You are focused on their pain because it distracts you from facing your own. You are busy healing their sicks, or so that you don't have to look at your own. The problem is that no amount of fixing others can replace inner work. No matter how much you give, how much you sacrifice, or how much you understand, their healing will not automatically heal you. Real transformation begins inside. Real healing requires reflection, courage, and a willingness to confront the shadows you've been avoiding, the unresolved emotions, the past traumas, the patterns that keep repeating. Until you do that, you are like a candle burning at both ends, lighting up everyone else's world while leaving your own life in darkness. And here's the catch. Empaths are particularly prone to this because of their heightened sensitivity. You feel pain so acutely, you are drawn to it. You are drawn to people who are suffering because it resonates with something inside you. But that resonance is not always a call to action. Sometimes it's a signal that you need to turn inward. Your compassion is a mirror showing you what needs attention within yourself. If you miss that, you can become trapped in a pattern of emotional codependence, where your identity is defined by how much you can fix, rather than by who you truly are. Now, this does not mean you stop caring. Empathy is not the enemy. It is your gift. But it does mean you have to redirect some of that compassion inward. You have to become willing to feel your own pain, to witness your own struggles, and to meet yourself with the same patience, understanding, and love that you offer others. When you do this, you break the cycle. You stop seeking validation through others' healing. You stop using other people's lives as a proxy for your own growth. You reclaim your power, your energy, and your emotional freedom. And here's the liberating truth. Once you begin focusing on your own healing, you actually become more effective in supporting others, because now When you help someone, you are doing it from a place of fullness, not depletion. You give without expecting to be healed in return. You connect without needing to absorb their pain as your own. And you realize that the most profound form of love is not self-sacrifice. It is presence, clarity, and integrity. So understand this. Healing others will never heal you. Real healing begins when you turn the same compassion inward. When you confront your own pain, process your own emotions, and take responsibility for your own growth. That is when transformation occurs. That is when you become whole. That is when your empathy becomes a force of true power, not a trap. Remember this, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Before you try to fix the world, fix yourself. Your deepest work, your most important healing begins with you. It always has, and it always will. One of the most challenging lessons for empaths is learning to tolerate discomfort without immediately trying to fix it. It seems counterintuitive at first, doesn't it? Your instincts push you toward action. You want to resolve tension. You want a harmony. You want the storm to pass. You want everyone to feel better because you feel better when they do. But here's a paradox. Growth, both for you and for others, often comes not from resolution, but from the ability to sit with discomfort. Most empaths are wired to restore balance. You're acutely aware when someone is upset, when energy is off, when emotions are raw. And because of that awareness, you step in, you soothe, you explain, you mediate, you sacrifice your own comfort to create calm. There's nothing inherently wrong with wanting peace. But when this becomes automatic, it short-circuits the natural processes of learning and self-discovery. The world does not always need you to fix it. People do not always need you to solve their discomfort. Sometimes they need space to feel, to process, to grow. And if you step in too quickly, you rob them of that opportunity, and you rob yourself of a profound skill, the ability to sit with tension without collapsing. Sitting with discomfort requires courage. It requires a willingness to allow silence, to tolerate uncertainty, to experience emotional gaps without panic. It challenges the very wiring of an empath's nervous system, which is designed to absorb and regulate the chaos around it. But this is the path to true resilience. Because when you can tolerate discomfort, you begin to distinguish between what is your responsibility and what is not. You begin to understand that not every problem needs your immediate intervention. Not every emotional wave needs your surfboard, and not every conflict requires your mediation. And here's the deeper truth. When you overgive to alleviate discomfort, you teach others and yourself that your worth is tied to their stability. You reinforce the idea that love equals labor, connection equals sacrifice, and value equals endurance. But that is not love. That is a transactional pattern that quietly erodes your strength. The most powerful empaths are those who can experience discomfort fully, witness it, and allow it to exist without letting it consume them. They understand that discomfort is temporary, that emotions are fluid, and that boundaries are the antidote to emotional collapse. This skill does more than protect your energy. It also fosters growth in those around you. People learn to confront their own feelings, to take responsibility for their emotions, and to develop resilience when they are not rescued at every turn. And you, as the empath, cultivate patience, emotional mastery, and a sense of calm that is not dependent on external circumstances. You begin to see that discomfort is not an enemy to be eliminated, but a teacher to be observed. Now, make no mistake, this is not about detachment. It's not about coldness or avoidance. Empathy is still your gift, still your power. But empathy does not require overextension. True compassion sometimes means standing still, observing and allowing the natural processes of growth to unfold without interference. It's in this tension, in this quiet space, that both you and others experience authentic development. So here is the lesson. Your instinct to overgive is admirable, but unchecked, it can become destructive. You must learn to tolerate discomfort, to resist the urge to overfix, and to honor the natural rhythm of life. The moment you do, you reclaim your energy, strengthen your presence, and cultivate a depth of patience and wisdom few possess. Remember this, discomfort is not a threat, it is a signal, it is a teacher. And when you can sit with it without overgiving, without losing yourself, you unlock a power that is both rare and transformative. True strength is not in constant action. It is in the courage to remain grounded while the world feels unsettled. The final truth every empath must understand is this: your worth is not measured by how much you endure. It's not measured by how much pain you tolerate, how many people you help, or how often you sacrifice your own needs to keep the world calm. Yet for many empaths, this has become a silent, unspoken belief. You've been conditioned to equate suffering with value, to believe that the more you give, the more love you demonstrate, and the longer you endure, the more meaningful your existence becomes. But that is a dangerous illusion. Endurance is not love. Tolerance is not connection. Sacrifice is not proof of worth. These are patterns that quietly erode your self-respect, drain your energy, and warp your understanding of true empathy. When you stay in situations that hurt you, tolerate behavior that disrespects you, or give endlessly without replenishing yourself, you are sending a message to yourself and to the world that your value depends on how much you can endure rather than who you are. And that is a trap few empaths recognize until it's almost too late. You must understand this deeply. Your value is inherent. It is not something to be earned through suffering or validated by the needs of others. Your presence, your consciousness, your capacity to feel and to connect, these are enough. You do not need to prove your love by overgiving. You do not need to prove your compassion by tolerating disrespect. And you do not need to prove your worth by sacrificing your well-being. That is not love. That is a misunderstanding of what it means to be human. The courage of an empath is not measured by their ability to endure. It is measured by their ability to stand in truth. The strength of an empath is not in how much they carry for others. It is in how clearly they understand the line between themselves and the world around them. When you stop measuring yourself by endurance, you reclaim your power. You stop letting external circumstances define your value. You stop giving away the most precious resource you have, your own energy. And here's where transformation begins. When you internalize this principle, everything in your life shifts. Relationships become healthier because you no longer tolerate what undermines you. Your connections are no longer based on sacrifice, but on mutual respect, choice, and authenticity. You learn to love fully without losing yourself, to give generously without depleting, and to empathize without becoming a receptacle for everyone else's chaos. This doesn't mean you stop caring. Far from it. It means you start caring wisely. It means that your empathy becomes a force for connection and understanding rather than a pathway to exhaustion. T means you honor yourself while still honoring others. And it means you recognize that the deepest, most sustainable form of love begins with self-respect. So let this be the final lesson. Your worth is not in what you tolerate. It is not in how much you suffer or how much you give. It is in who you are at your core, unshaken by external demands, steady in your values, and unwavering in your understanding of your own power. When you accept this truth, you step into a life of freedom, clarity, and authentic connection. Remember this: your endurance does not define you. Your compassion does not require your collapse. Your love is not measured in sacrifice. You're enough simply because you exist. And that is the most powerful, transformative truth an empathy can ever truly embrace. As we come to the close of this journey, I want you to carry one undeniable truth with you. Being an empathist is not a burden, it is a gift. But gifts, no matter how extraordinary, require wisdom to wield. You've learned today that empathy without boundaries becomes self-erasure, sensitivity without structure becomes chaos, and giving without discernment becomes depletion. You've discovered that understanding someone does not obligate you to carry them, that healing others will never heal you, and that discomfort is not the enemy but a teacher. Most importantly, you've realized that your worth is not measured by how much you endure, but by your courage to stand in truth, honor your energy, and protect the essence of who you are. The journey of an empath is a path of power, not sacrifice. It is a path of presence, not obsession. It is a path of clarity, not confusion. And the most extraordinary part is this. When you honor yourself, your relationships transform, your energy multiplies, and your ability to love becomes limitless. Not because you give more, but because you give wisely, fully, and from a place of strength. So today, make this choice for yourself. You will feel deeply, but you will not collapse. You will love fully, but you will not lose yourself. You will give generously, but you will not deplete. You will embrace your gift as an empath, not as a sentence, and you will step into a life of freedom, clarity, and profound connection. Remember this. Your empathy is your superpower. Your sensitivity is your strength, and your worth is inherent. You do not need to earn it, prove it, or sacrifice for it. Stand in that truth, live in that power, and let the world see the extraordinary force of who you truly are. You are enough. You always have been. And when you walk forward with this understanding, there is nothing in this world you cannot face, nothing you cannot love, and nothing you cannot transform.